Apple's foldable iPhone just took a major step closer to reality. And one detail in this leak says everything about how serious Apple is. Samsung Display is reportedly the only supplier, according to a Korea-based report. Apple has reached an agreement with Samsung Display to supply foldable OLED panels for Apple's first foldable iPhone. And here's the key part. Apple reportedly will not use foldable panels from any other display makers under this deal. No multi-source, no backup vendor, just Samsung. That's a rare move for Apple. Apple typically spreads supply across multiple partners to protect itself from shortages, pricing pressure, and production risks. But foldable displays are a different game. The report suggests Apple accepted Samsung's terms because, right now, there simply aren't enough viable alternatives that meet Apple's quality and durability standards for a mass-market foldable iPhone. And if Apple is willing to lock in Samsung as the exclusive source, it's a clear sign the company believes Samsung is the only supplier that can deliver the reliability Apple needs for a product this high stakes. Now let's talk about what Apple is actually building. The foldable iPhone is expected to be a book device, meaning it opens like a book, not a flip phone. When unfolded, it should reveal a larger inner display, reportedly similar in size to an iPad mini. That's the dream scenario many Apple fans have been waiting for. An iPhone that transforms into a compact tablet when you need more screen space without carrying a second device. And if Apple is going book style first, that also tells us something important about priorities, productivity, media, and multitasking rather than just style and compactness. So why Samsung? Because Samsung isn't just another display supplier. Samsung has been the pioneer in foldable hardware for years, and its manufacturing experience is the kind you only get after multiple generations of real-world devices that have been bent, folded, dropped, overheated, and used by millions of people. But Apple isn't just ordering any foldable OLED, the report says. Samsung will supply Apple with foldable OLED panels using COE technology, short for color filter, on encapsulation. Here's why that matters. In a typical OLED stack, you often have a polarizer layer that helps reduce reflections and improves visibility. But in foldables, polarizers can become a liability. They can contribute to stress points at the bend. Increasing the chances of cracking or long-term damage, COE removes the polarizer and instead forms the color filter layer directly on top of the encapsulation layer. That change improves flexibility and durability, exactly what a foldable iPhone needs if Apple wants fewer crease issues and fewer failures at the hinge area. And in this leak, COE isn't framed as a nice-to-have feature. It's described as a requirement for foldable devices, which tells you Apple isn't approaching this like a concept product. They're approaching it like a mainstream iPhone that must survive real people using it every day. For years. Now here's another detail that feels very Apple. The foldable iPhone display reportedly will use the same M14 OLED materials as the iPhone 17 Pro Max. Instead of switching to a newer, untested material set, that decision is reportedly based on two things: reliability and lower costs. In other words, Apple is choosing what's proven over what's flashy, and that fits Apple's pattern perfectly. Apple usually doesn't try to be first with risky tech in a new product category. Apple tries to be the first to make it feel finished. Using a known old material set reduces risk, simplifies calibration, helps yield rates, and increases the odds that the foldable iPhone won't become a durability controversy on day one. If you're waiting for Apple's foldable iPhone because you don't trust first-generation fold, this detail is exactly what you want to hear now. The biggest question: when is it launching? We've seen mixed reports, and that's where things get interesting. Bloomberg says Apple's foldable iPhone development is progressing smoothly, and the device is still on track to launch during the standard September iPhone window that would put it in the same launch season as Apple's flagship iPhones. Apple would treat the foldable as a true headline product, not a side experiment, but a recent Nikkei report claimed engineering delays could push the device into 2027. So which is it? Here's the part of the leak that helps reconcile the timeline confusion. An industry source cited by the Elect says Samsung Display's production of foldable OLED panels for Apple will begin in the second quarter of this year, as originally planned, regardless of whether final device assembly faces delays later. In other words, even if Apple shifts the final launch by months, the supply chain is still moving forward right now. And that's big dot because display production doesn't ramp early unless the customer is confident enough to commit. This isn't a rumor about a prototype, it's a report about production, timing, and shipments. The same source says the initial shipment is expected to be around 3 million units. That number matters because it hints at Apple's strategy, not unlimited mass market volume on day one. 3 million units suggests Apple expects high demand, but it's still cautious about yield rates and production complexity, typical for a first-generation device using new form factor engineering. It's enough inventory to make the foldable iPhone real, visible, and attainable without betting the entire iPhone business on a brand new category overnight. And while this leak is foldable, iPhone-focused, it also connects to a much bigger Apple display roadmap. Apple already uses old displays in products like iPad Pro, Apple Watch, but the report suggests there are still no plans to bring old to the low-cost iPad anytime soon, likely because Apple wants to keep that model affordable and protect profit margins. However, the iPad mini could be a different story, with OLED reportedly targeting 2026. And then there's the the MacBook Pro is expected to get old when it's redesigned later this year, and the leak adds an attention-grabbing twist. Touchscreen functionality may finally come to the MacBook Pro at the same time. If that happens, it would be one of the biggest Mac changes in years. Because Apple has resisted touchscreen Macs for a long time, pairing old with a redesign and touch support would signal Apple is ready to blur the line between iPad and Mac more than ever. Finally, the MacBook Air is reportedly on track for OLED in 2028, suggesting Apple is staggering old adoption across product lines based on price, tier, and production capacity. So let's put it all together. This leak paints a clear picture of Apple's foldable iPhone plan. Samsung Display becomes Apple's exclusive foldable. Old Supplier CoE technology is used to improve durability at the bend and reduce cracking risk. Apple sticks with proven M14 old materials for reliability and cost. Control panel production begins in Q2 with an initial 3 million units planned. Bloomberg says September is still the target, while other reports hint at possible delays, and Apple's broader old roadmap continues across iPad and Mac. Over the next few years, if this is accurate, Apple isn't just experimenting with foldables. Apple is preparing to launch a foldable iPhone the Apple way, cautious, high quality, and built around a supply chain that can actually deliver.